Hello and welcome to another Modern Deck Tech here on CheapAssMTG. Today we're going to go through a pet deck of mine with Abzan Tokens. So token strategies are a tale as old as time as far as Magic is concerned. The more renowned token strategies, particularly in Modern, is black-white tokens, combining the token producing ability of white cards with the interruptive ability of black cards to produce a sort of mid-range control style deck that wins the game through cards like Lingering Souls. This deck is slightly different. We go at it from a different angle. We go with more of a green focus, another colour that works well with tokens, with some elements of black alongside the usual elements of white. So at its core, the deck is built around 3 Planeswalkers. We play 4 copies of Nissa Voice of Zendikar, 3 copies of Gideon Ally of Zendikar, the best of friends from the green-white token strategies in Standard. And we also play 1 copy of Sorin. Now, I've gone for Lord of Innistrad. Some people would choose Sorin Solemn Visitor. I think this is a kind of personal choice. I prefer having the Sorin that ticks up to produce tokens. It is the aim of these Planeswalkers is to give you a repetitive source of tokens, which is why I prefer Lord of Innistrad. As I said, the deck is playing white for the raw power of its token producers. So we play 4 copies of Lingering Souls. Very great value card. Effectively gives you 4/1/1 spirits off of a single card, which is very nice. 3 copies of Spectral Possession. The mana requirement here is somewhat tough, but doable. And again, it's a very good value card. Very strong early play. We also play 2 copies of Secure the Wastes. So originally this slot was Raise the Alarm, but I decided to try out Secure the Wastes. Secure is better on every turn of the game, pretty much, bar turn 2 and maybe turn 3 when it's about the same. And you're not really looking to cast Secure the Wastes as your turn 2 play or as your turn 3 play. So I think it's better to go have the stronger card in the late game here. And as we have access to black, we also play 3 copies of Bitter Blossom. The most standard black-white tokens card. A repetitive source of tokens. Yeah, it's very strong. It has been on the Modern ban list. There's a tribute to how strong it is, so it's time this card saw some play again. One of the reasons we play green in this deck is for a bit of ramp. For this, we play some Mana Dorks. We play 4 copies of Noble Hierarch and 4 copies of Birds of Paradise. These are ramp. These are also great fixing. It makes casting cards like Spectral Possession easier. Also gives you access to a turn 2 Spectral Possession, which is a very strong start. Noble Hierarch is, however, a very expensive Modern card. If you do want to play this deck on a budget, then there are definitely some budget alternatives. The best one I would say is Avacyn's Pilgrim. Back onto the creatures. We also play 2 copies of Selfless Spirit. Obviously, any tokens deck is going to be quite weak to board sweepers. Selfless Spirit does help mitigate this, giving all our creatures indestructible. It's also a flying body that can store counters on from Nissa, which that works nicely. And we also have 5 interactive slots. For this, we've chosen 3 Fatal Push, 2 Path to Exile. Fatal Push kills most of the creatures in the format that we want to kill. We do need some Path to Exile for things like Reality Smasher and Tasiga. Onto the mana base. The mana base is quite tricky. We have quite restrictive mana requirements even with the Mana Dorks. So we'll start with the fetch lands. We play 4 copies of Windswept Heath, 2 copies of Marsh Flats, and 1 copy of Verdant Catacombs. Marsh Flats and Verdant Catacombs are quite expensive, having not been reprinted in a while, so there are budget alternatives, which we'll get onto later in the video. We also play 5 Shocklands, these being 2 Temple Garden, 2 Godless Shrine, and 1 Overgrown Tomb. These can be fetched by any of our fetch lands, which give us some consistency in the mana base, even if it is at the expense of our life total. We do also play some fast lands. We play 2 Razorverge Thicket and 1 Blooming Marsh. It's important that our fast lands give us green, as that's the colour we're most going to need on turn 1. If everything goes well, we're also going to need a lot of white on turn 2, hence more Razorverge Thickets. And we also get to play some utility lands. We play 3 copies of Gavany Township, obviously an all-star in tokens decks, and also 1 copy of Vault of the Archangel. As I mentioned, it can be quite a painful mana base to your life total, and decks like Burn can be a pretty poor matchup. So having access to Vault main deck is particularly good, and I think it's just generally a good role player against a wide variety of decks. As for basics, we play enough basics that mean we can play around Blood Moon if we have to. This is 2 forests, 2 plains, and 1 swamp. Now onto the sideboard. We're effectively an Abzan deck, so we can sideboard much like a normal Abzan deck would. So we have access to Stony Silence, Creeping Corrosion, and Rest in Peace. Stony Silence obviously against decks like Affinity. Creeping Corrosion is an interesting inclusion. It's there for decks like Lantern Control, which is probably quite a bad matchup. We don't have much to take down. Ensnaring Bridge. And Rest in Peace is just going to be useful against quite a wide variety of decks. Dredge is still somewhat a force in the format. Grixis Control, for example, likes to delve away so it can get Tasigur. Obviously good against cards like Tarmogoyf. As I said earlier, Burn is a pretty bad matchup for us, so we have some Burn-specific hoses that will come in useful in other matchups. These being Spellskite, Leyline of Sanctity, and Time Reinforcements. Spellskite is good against any deck that wants to target, so Infect can make them redirect their pump spells to your 0/4 artifact. Leyline obviously just turns off all their burn spells. They have to rely on their creatures, which you can chump block. And Town Reinforcements is just going to be useful if you think your life total's under pressure or your opponent's going to have more creatures than you. You can also bring this in place of 1 Lingering Souls in matchups where you bring in Rest in Peace, because obviously Lingering Souls and Rest in Peace is really not a great combination. And finally, we have some interaction in our sideboard. We have Thoughtseize, Surgical Extraction, and Abrupt Decay. Thoughtseize and Surgical Extraction are particularly going to be against any deck trying to utilise a combo. Either we can strip it out of their hands, and if we're lucky enough, we can even strip it out of their decks with Surgical Extraction. Surgical Extraction is possibly the first card I would move out this sideboard. It's very optimistic plan to be able to turn 1 Thoughtseize and Surgical when you've only got 1 Surgical and 2 Thoughtseize. And we also play 2 copies of Abrupt Decay as another removal spell. Can't be countered, so it's good against any decks relying on counter spells. It's also good against Lantern Control because it can destroy non-land permanents. It doesn't just have to be creatures, so it's another card for that matchup that will help us improve post-board. As I mentioned throughout the video, there are some cards in this deck which are quite expensive, and if you do want to play, you may wish for some budget alternatives. The 3 cards I think you can swap out of the deck and maintain a good level of competitiveness is Verdant Catacombs, Marshflat, and Noble Hierarch. The obvious swaps here would be other fetch lands for the fetch lands, so I'd consider Wooded Foothills and Flooded Strand as cheaper fetch lands. You may also have them in your collection from drafting Khans of Tarkir or playing in Standard. And the best swap for Noble Hierarch is Avacyn's Pilgrim. It does impact the mana base, but it is passable, and certainly saves you about $60 a card, which is quite a big cost. So that's the Abzan Tokens modern deck tech. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like the video if you do like the deck tech, and please subscribe to the channel. There will be more Magic content coming your way. You can also follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. And you can also communicate with us on there, and we will do our best to respond. Hopefully you'll join us for future videos.